Hi, I'm Grace Mitchell, and this is the story of how my family learned that sometimes the most powerful people are the ones they look down on the most. In my family, success was measured in dollars and prestige. My older brother James was the CEO of a growing tech company. My younger sister Sophia ran a chain of luxury boutiques, and both were considered the stars of our family. Meanwhile, I was just a high school teacher, or as my family called it, settling for less. The irony? While they flaunted their wealth, I was quietly building an educational empire that would eventually bring them to their knees. It started 10 years ago when I graduated with my teaching degree. While my siblings pursued high-powered corporate careers, I followed my passion for education. But I saw something they didn't: the broken system that left many students behind and the opportunity that created. Teaching? Really, Grace? Dad had scoffed at my career choice. With your grades, you could have been something important. Mom was gentler, but no less dismissive. Honey, teachers barely make enough to live on. How will you maintain our family standard? What they didn't know was that I was already thinking bigger. While teaching during the day, I spent my nights developing an innovative educational technology platform. I saw how traditional schools struggled with remote learning during the pandemic, how private schools charged exorbitant fees for outdated methods, and how many students needed something different. My platform started small, just a few online courses for struggling students. But it grew, powered by innovative AI-driven personalized learning and real-time adaptation to student needs. While my family mocked my little teaching job, I was revolutionizing education. I lived modestly despite my growing success, staying in my small apartment and driving my old car. Why? Because I learned early that true power doesn't need to show off. My family assumed I was struggling on a teacher's salary, never bothering to ask about the educational technology company I'd built. The turning point came at our annual Thanksgiving family dinner. James had just closed a major deal, and Sophia had opened her 10th boutique. The Mitchell family was gathering to celebrate their success, and, as usual, to remind me of my failures. I arrived early to help Mom with dinner, wearing simple slacks and a sweater. Sophia immediately noticed. "Oh, Grace," she sighed, adjusting her designer dress. "Couldn't you have dressed more successfully?" James arrived next, striding in with his usual arrogance. "Hey, it's our favorite charity case. How's shaping young minds, sis? Still making pennies?" I smiled, helping Mom with the turkey. "The students are doing well. Thanks for asking." Dad came in from his study, barely acknowledging me as he hugged my siblings. "James, heard about the deal. Brilliant work, son. And Sophia, your new boutique location is perfect." The dinner table was set with our best china, crystal glasses sparkling under the chandelier. As we sat down, James's wife Amanda started discussing their children's education. "The tuition at Wellington Prep is insane," she complained, naming one of the most prestigious private schools in the city. "But of course, only the best for our kids." "Same at Riverside Academy," Sophia chimed in, referring to where her children attended. "But that's what it takes for success." I took a sip of water, hiding my smile. They had no idea that both schools were now owned by my company, EdTech Innovations, through recent acquisitions. "Well," James smirked, "some of us can afford the best, unlike others who chose to teach." Dad nodded sagely. "It's about ambition. Some people just don't have it." "Speaking of success," James continued, straightening his tie, "I have an announcement. My company just leased the entire Morrison building downtown. Prime real estate, top dollar. He looked at me pointedly. Something a teacher's salary could never touch. Little did he know that my company owned that building too, through a subsidiary focused on educational real estate investments. The lease his company signed was actually with one of my corporations. That's wonderful, dear. Mom beamed. Grace, maybe James could help you find a better career. Something more worthwhile. I opened my mouth to respond, but James cut me off. Let's be honest here. Teaching is for failures. People who couldn't make it in the real world. I mean, look at Grace. Living in that tiny apartment, driving that old car. Is that really someone who deserves to be at this table celebrating success? The room fell silent. Even Mom looked uncomfortable. James? I started, but Dad interrupted. No, he's right, Dad said firmly. This dinner is to celebrate achievement. Grace, maybe it's better if you go. We'll save you some leftovers. I looked around the table. Sophie was studying her plate. Mom wrung her napkin in her hands. James sat back, triumphant. Slowly, I stood up, placing my napkin beside my untouched plate. Thank you for your honesty, I said quietly. I'll see myself out. As I walked to my car, I pulled out my phone and sent 2 emails that would change everything. The first to my legal team, the second to the board of directors. Tomorrow morning, my family would learn exactly what kind of failure they'd just kicked out of Thanksgiving dinner. And their world would never be the same. The next morning dawned crisp and clear as I sat in my downtown office. Not the high school classroom where my family assumed I spent my days, but the executive suite of EdTech Innovations headquarters. I watched through floor-to-ceiling windows as my family members arrived one by one, responding to urgent messages they'd received at dawn. James arrived first, storming through the lobby in his designer suit, demanding to know why his company's lease had been suddenly terminated. Sophia came next, her perfect makeup not quite hiding her panic after learning both her children's school admission had been under review. My parents arrived last, clutching letters about an emergency board meeting of the family's charitable foundation. I watched on the security feed as they were directed to the main conference room, their confusion growing as they recognized each other. What are you doing here? James demanded when our parents walked in. Emergency foundation meeting, Dad replied, waving his letter. But why are you both here? Sophia was checking her phone frantically. I can't reach anyone at the kids' school. Something about new ownership reviewing all admissions. New ownership? James's head snapped up. The Morrison building just got sold too. My entire lease is void. This has to be a mistake. That's when I walked in, still wearing my simple teacher's clothes. The room fell silent. Grace. Mom looked bewildered. What are you doing here? I took my place at the head of the conference table, nodding to my executive team as they filed in with documents. I think it's time we had a family meeting about education and success. We don't have time for your teacher talk, James snapped. Some of us have real business crises to handle. I smiled, sliding folders across the table. Actually, those crises are why you're here. Let me introduce myself properly. I'm Grace Mitchell, CEO of EdTech Innovations and its subsidiaries, including Wellington Prep Schools, Riverside Academy, and Mitchell Educational Properties. The color drained from their faces as they opened the folders. That's impossible, Sophia whispered, staring at the documents. These schools, the property holdings, are all part of my little teaching job. I finished. EdTech Innovations currently manages assets worth $2.8 billion, including the entire Wellington and Riverside school networks, dozens of commercial properties, including your building, James, and the largest educational technology platform in North America. Dad's hands trembled as he read. But you're just a teacher. I am a teacher, I corrected him. One who saw how broken our education system was and decided to fix it. While you were all mocking my career choice, I was building something that would change thousands of lives. I clicked a remote, bringing up our company's portfolio on the wall screen. Every time you dismissed education as beneath you, I acquired another school. Every time you bragged about real business, I expanded our technology platform. And every time you called me a failure, I remembered why I started this, because success isn't just about money, it's about impact. So what now? James's arrogance had evaporated. You're going to kick my company out? Remove my kids from their schools? That depends, I replied calmly, on whether you've learned anything from this moment. I stood up, walking to the window. Education isn't just about teaching facts, it's about teaching values, something our family seems to have forgotten. Turning back to face them, I continued, your lease isn't terminated, James, but the terms have changed. 20% of your office space will now host a free coding academy for underprivileged students. Your children can stay in their schools, Sophia, but you'll be joining the parent committee for our scholarship program. And us? Mom asked quietly. The family foundation will be restructured. Instead of funding galas and country club memberships, it will provide educational opportunities for students who remind me of the person I used to be. Someone with potential that others failed to see. The silence in the room was deafening. Finally, Dad spoke, his voice rough with emotion. All these years, we thought. You thought what you wanted to think, I finished gently. You saw a teacher and assumed you knew my worth. You never asked about my dreams, my work, my success. Because it didn't fit your definition of achievement. Sophia wiped tears from her eyes, smudging her perfect makeup. Why didn't you tell us? Would you have listened? I asked. Or would you have tried to take over, like you do with everything else? Over the next few months, our family dynamics shifted dramatically. James's coding academy produced its first class of graduates, many of whom he ended up hiring. Sophia discovered a passion for mentoring scholarship students. And my parents. They finally came to one of my classes, not at Wellington Prep or Riverside Academy, but at the public high school where I still taught 3 days a week. Now I understand, Dad said afterward, watching as students crowded around my desk with questions. This isn't settling for less. This is choosing what matters. 1 year later, we had another Thanksgiving dinner. This time, when James talked about success, he spoke about his coding academy students. When Sophia discussed her boutiques, she mentioned the internship program for scholarship recipients. And when Dad raised his glass for a toast, he said something I never expected to hear. To Grace, who taught us that the greatest success isn't in what you earn, but in what you give back. To the daughter we underestimated, who became the teacher we all needed. I still live in my modest apartment, still drive my sensible car, still teach at the same public school. But now, when my family gets together, no one asks when I'll get a real job. Instead, they ask how they can help make education better for the next generation. Because sometimes the quiet ones, the ones dismissed as failures, are the ones changing the world, while others are too busy judging what they don't understand. And sometimes the best revenge isn't proving others wrong. It's teaching them how to be right. That's not just good business. That's good education. And in the end, that's a lesson worth more than all the money in the world.